Welcome to the Pitchwerks podcast. I'm Scott McTaggart. Over the last 20 years, I've been a sales rep, a marketer, a manager, an executive, a consultant, and an advisor. This show is designed to give you access to my list of contacts so that you can learn more about how to present your ideas at work and succeed in your career.
Startups and salespeople, marketers and managers from the Epicast Network in Pittsburgh. It's the Pitchwerks podcast.
You have to be all in because it's moving too fast. I think you can look at any industry, whether it's the television, the automobile. You know, for the automobile to hit 50 million cars, it was like 30 some years.
Yeah.
You know, for PayPal, it was like, what, 3 months? I don't know.
Hey everybody, it's Scott. It's Monday and it's a special edition of the Pitchwerks podcast. I'm here with John Providence. He's in charge of revenue for EagleDream Technologies. They are literally the #1 AWS, Amazon Web Services reseller in the northeastern United States. It is a huge deal. Full disclosure, I just got to make sure you're aware. The reason we're releasing this as a special edition of the Pitchwerks podcast is because John and I are actually working together on a separate contract. We're helping his company to launch here in Pittsburgh because once they got to the top of the mountain, all of a sudden they became very much in demand in a lot of different cities, and it's just impossible to launch everywhere. So on the one hand, you could see this as a commercial, I suppose, but I really wanted to get inside of John's head and find out how they got to #1 in the first place. You've got your Wednesday show coming up. It's going to be a good one, by the way. But I do think John is a 100% legitimate guest, and there are some real insights in terms of how did they get to the top of the northeastern U.S., where New York, Boston, some of these huge cities and huge companies that live there are all part of the scene. And don't forget, I mean, there's very competitive AWS resellers in those places too. So I think you're going to like this episode. Don't forget to rate and review if you haven't already. Let's jump in. Let's talk to John.
All right, now seated directly across from me, Mr. John Providence, EagleDream Technologies. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you, Scott?
Man, I am so glad to have you here in the studio.
I am thrilled to be here.
Man.
I did 3.5 hours. It was great.
From Rochester, New York, coming down from EagleDream. And I'm going to brag on you for a second.
Oh, boy.
There are 5 billion, and I checked, that's a real number. I did the research. There are 5 billion AWS Amazon resellers.
58,000.
Oh, close enough. And you're #1 in the Northeast. EagleDream is #1 in the Northeast. And there are some very, very large cities in the Northeast. I mean, getting to the top of that mountain is a tremendous accomplishment. Congratulations on that.
No, thank you. And every day we do start at the bottom of the mountain. But the good news is, Scott, that you and I are mountain climbers.
The Sisyphus approach is definitely, it has its perks, but it also has its drags. So back up for a second. Let's make sure everybody knows
Sure.
AWS. That is Amazon Web Services. And this is the thing, right? The cloud environment, which on one hand, you can sort of easily talk about and just say, okay, well, AWS, computers in the cloud, I get it, right? And then you get your magnifying glass out and you start looking at the granularity. And I'm gonna share a little funny anecdote. Just as you were coming down to the studio, you ran into our friend Ryan Haggerty, who makes tremendous videos and films and whatnot. And you said, oh, there's a special flavor of AWS. If you want to do content distribution, there's like a Netflix version of AWS. And I just scratched my head. I was like, this thing is infinite and difficult to understand.
That's right. And that's the best part, is that companies are using this every day to build and iterate on.
Yeah.
Ultimately providing industry differentiating customer experiences. And that's what's happening today. And if you're not doing it, what digital native company is going to come out and undercut your customer base? And it's happening everywhere. And you have to defend and you have to innovate.
I love that you brought the good pitch right off the top too.
Let's go.
Because you did it. You said industry differentiating, right? Let's unpack that. You didn't start on day one saying those words, right? Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, you're in an environment. AWS, I think, is kind of and I mean no disrespect to them, sort of like the Kleenex of the business. When people mean cloud, a lot of times they'll just say AWS, right? Mm-hmm. Or they'll say EC2, or they'll say something along those lines, which comes from the Amazon vernacular. But you had to start getting a little competitive.
That's right.
And you had to kind of whip yourself into shape so that you could put your best foot forward. How is it that industry differentiating came to be such an early part of your pitch, your explanation?
It stopped being about product, price, and service, and it started to become customer experience.
Okay.
And customer experience actually might be more important than
your customer or their customer on the other end of the transaction.
Customer's customer.
Yeah.
And it became more about that value than product, service, price, which we've known to be for so long.
Well, it's dangerous. IT, infrastructure, anything technology. A lot of times you end up in hyperdrive towards Commodityville, right? Like we had Ben Mosier come through here, who is a really smart guy. He does this thing called Wardley Mapping. It's like understanding how a business works by graphing it out and explaining its nature, right? And he says, well, every cool thing starts at this phase called Genesis and then eventually ends up at this phase called commodity. And when you're at commodity, most people, that's where you do price fights, right? Like, okay, well, you can buy a widget from me for $1, you can buy it from him for 99 cents, but my widget is worth $1 because of X, right? If I'm hearing you right, you're still in that value add part of value add reseller.
It's true digital transformation and where a company is in that journey, whether it's digitization, which would be like a newspaper going electronic, or digitalization, which is that newspaper now collecting payment cards and doing subscriptions online, versus digital transformation, where they're actually understanding their customer better, getting data, and pushing things that the customer might not know that they want yet to them. And that's what's fun. That's where we're getting customers and companies every day thinking differently. And I think, Scott, and I'd love your opinion on this, is, what is the residual effect of your digitally native companies like Uber, Facebook, Instagram? Those experiences are new and people are getting more used to them. What's the residual effect of those customers in the enterprise?
Well, I can say this. And I hate to sound like Andy Rooney here, right? Like that, like the grumpy old, but we have to start with an assumption that is people are more convinced that they can get what they want elsewhere than ever before. They're less likely to believe in a unicorn of value than ever before. If what you want is to be the inevitable product in your space, then you can't lose people to, well, there must be some other choice, and they just nope out on you because you had a bad day or you couldn't deliver. So that's my opinion. I think the difference between being A+ and A is literally billions of dollars. And I think the difference is, can you deliver on command when the customer is making a decision whether or not you're going to be on their phone or be on their bookmarks list or whatever. And I don't think a lot of us are wired that way, so we have to force ourselves to think about good versus great.
That is a well put point, and that's what's so exciting about the platform and about helping companies get to start at the customer experience, work backwards, build, iterate, and always be innovation. Nice. Always be that.
Well, you guys are that. You're the top in AWS for the Northeast. I mean, you're kind of what I was describing.
And we are getting there, right? But every day, stasis is scary. So I can't say I'm there because tomorrow that digitally native company could pop up. So stasis is scary.
Yeah.
So it's always day one in our business, of course. We always try to keep that.
Well, you're in a very competitive space.
Very.
There's no question about that. So I actually want to ask I was going to ask, how'd you get there? How does that happen?
We were asked by another competitor who was just doing some fishing. What keeps you relevant? What conferences do you go to? And what books do you read?
Yeah.
Yeah, all of them. But the most important thing we do is we listen to our customers.
Yeah.
Just truly listen. What are you trying to accomplish?
You know that a lot of people are going to sharpshoot you when they hear this answer, and they're going to go, that's what everybody says.
Sure. And you know what? I hope they do, but what are they building and iterating on? How are they taking, customer experience into play and working backwards by using the platform, whether it's machine learning, artificial intelligence, embedding AI in code, and leveraging that platform, but also navigating AWS. It's a big company. Everyone knows Amazon is huge.
Okay, see, I don't know you that well. You and I have only just started working together fairly recently, but I will say this. I will give you the compliment you won't give yourself, right? The difference for me, and the reason that I work with so many startups, is the fact that startups are very product oriented. Like they know their product backwards and forwards because there isn't this infinite complexity. A lot of your big corporates, they get into this habit where it's like, oh, I can't know it all, so I'm not even going to try. You said a sentence to me probably 2 weeks ago where you said, and I'm going to bungle the detail here because I can't remember what the time frame was, but you said Amazon turned on 1,200 new features in their environment. And I want to say it was during the last calendar year, but that's the part I was not 100% certain about. Knowing that brought you a certain amount of credibility at X number of tables as you jump on planes and fly around.
Yeah, right.
Like I guarantee you got up and walked out of a couple of rooms and you're like, that John seems like he's pretty okay. He knows
Things
exactly how
okay.
many features they turned on last year.
1,462 new features last year. 85% or so were software based.
On the sales end, a lot of people don't know what's possible, right? Like,
True.
There is this ever going on fight, this elasticity between sort of like, we want to be McDonald's. We want to be on every street corner, right? Starbucks is actually probably what somebody would say if they were younger and more relevant than me. We want to be the Starbucks of it, right?
That's right.
But I really enjoy working with people who feel like professionals, who behave like professionals. And that 1,400 number of features that were turned on is one of the ways that I can tell whether or not you take your business seriously or you're actually like browsing Indeed trying to figure out, see how I didn't say monster? That's how you know.
I love that.
I'm
love that.
Young and relevant. See, I told you.
You are.
I'm not. This gray hair is just killing me, bud. No, the idea of if I'm going to trust my job, which is really what we're talking about in a lot of cases, right? With, this infrastructure company, that construction company, these big, large dollar decisions that B2B clients are making, right? They don't want to hear that you are a generalist and you don't really know. They love when you get into the details and you show them a flash of like, no, I really studied this.
You have to be all in because it's moving too fast. I think you can look at any industry, whether it's the television, the automobile, for the automobile to hit 50 million cars, it was like 30 some years.
Yeah.
For PayPal, it was like, 3 months? I don't know.
That is a shocking analogy.
If you think about that, the fact that digital market segments are out there.
Yeah.
And if you leverage properly, and not just create an omni-channel experience, but a channel agnostic experience.
Yeah.
You're doing some amazing things to capitalize on that entire market segment. And, you can even look at the highest performing stock in the 80s was Circuit City.
Really?
It was. In only 6 years, it was the highest performing stock based on customer experience. And what happened? Of course, they had Best Buy come in, different customer experience, the Geek Squad, other things like that came up. Then Amazon.com came in and undercut them a little bit. Mm-hmm. But Circuit City, what they did was they invested in other companies. One was a bank and one was CarMax, which is now a $16 billion company we're all familiar with. Yeah. So we're reaching so many more people where boundaries don't matter anymore. And that's what the power of the cloud can do.
And we kind of are at a place now where if you're not careful, you don't see patterns, you see chaos. And chaos makes people nervous, right? Again, going back to who do I want to work with? I want to work with somebody who reassures me. I want to feel as though it's not chaos. Show me the pattern. Right? And show me you understand what's going to happen. You don't have to see 20 years in the future. And I'm not asking for lottery numbers. I just want to know it's going to be okay. And how can you justify that is the next question afterwards. You can't just go, oh no, it's going to be okay. And then have me shrug it off. Then I'm going to want to hear things that tell me, and we studied this market and this is what we saw when we studied it. Let's take it in a different direction just for a moment. So right now you have, if I'm right, probably two major types of client that you approach, right? There are people who have never had anything in a cloud environment, and there are people who have some amount of investment. And I want to split that second group a little bit because I am a student of models and markets too. And I find that a lot of times this is about the time when someone finds out that they didn't do it right. They went ahead and migrated to the cloud, but it's maybe a little clunky. And I don't know. I mean, how much are you marketing to those people right now? Is that even a thing?
It's a huge thing. And actually, we're one of the launch partners for what's called the Well-Architected program within Amazon Web Services.
Okay.
There's about 32 of us in that category in the world.
Oh, wow.
So we actually do audits on, did you build this right? Is it secure? Is it efficient? And is it cost optimized?
So I've not brought you any new ideas, but at least it sounds like I'm validated by the fact that other smart people thought the same thing.
Right. And the best part about it though, Scott, is that Amazon's investing in it. If you go through this process, they're going to give the customer $5,000 or some amount of money, but minimum $5,000. No, it's actually minimum now. They're changing a little bit on that.
I was trying to give you your disclaimer language at the bottom of the commercial.
Yeah, I know. I'm just learning about things. I just came from the Pittsburgh office, so there's some new things happening there. But they are providing incentive to actually make sure that your workloads are secure and optimized. Does it keep AWS out of the paper from a breach? Probably. That's some good incentive there.
Oh, yeah.
But they're not looking to maximize your spend. They know that today's $1,000 customer is tomorrow's $5,000 customer.
Right.
Because once you're on the platform, you're building, you're iterating, you're using
Plus,
machine
they're
learning.
adding extra stuff to it, right?
Every day.
They're sweetening the deal with upsell type things that make your life easier.
We just did this new project on Deep Lens, doing sentiment analysis on an audience.
Yeah.
Where you could do facial recognition. You could see if someone was concerned, angry. Again, people are using these tools for customer experience purposes.
Absolutely. There's a lot of marketing dollars available for this kind of application.
Ton. I work with a very large business in the sports industry. You all have heard of them. And they're using it in their merchandise tents. Mm-hmm. And when you enter the venue itself, they want to know sort of who's coming in, why are they coming in, get your behaviors a little bit, which is a little scary.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they're trying to provide experiences. Definitely for all your audience members, Google AWS well architected, and you're going to be able to see the framework, how it's around operational excellence, security, reliability, performance. It's always getting better.
Okay.
It's always changing. And it's always getting better. They're staying on the cutting edge. It is the forefront.
Yeah.
We know where we are as a IT culture. These guys are the leader. They're upper right-hand quadrant by far.
Oh yeah.
I see Google catching up quickly, candidly.
Google's a great company.
They are a good company. I think from a cloud native ability to do machine learning as a platform, to look at your database technologies, you're going to need well-architected frameworks in place. Not maybe for you, but for your managers.
Is that because like all of a sudden your processor is going to go out of control on one side and your storage, like you can't necessarily predict how it's going to be used, or is it just clunky because code works and people accept it?
Well, if you're running an IT business, you don't want to have any technical debt there. You want to make sure that if you get that, unfortunately, hit by a bus issue, you want to make sure that it's there and it's good.
You ran a Super Bowl commercial and now everybody wants to hit your website.
You got it.
Yeah.
And it has to perform well. It has to be secure. If you're accepting payment cards, if you're doing anything in healthcare, you want to make sure these things are there and compliant.
Oh, that's like having a tattoo on your like a target-shaped tattoo.
And it's happening.
Yeah.
Again, it's that residue of what customers are used to from Amazon.com, the ease of use, Uber, PayPal, all those digitally mature companies. We're expecting that in business now as the consumer. So we have to have these frameworks in place.
Every time, immediately, when I want it.
And it actually has to give me quality recommendations.
And I will give you an angry tweet. This is substandard service. How many times have you seen the one aimed at an airline because a flight was delayed? Right?
Guilty.
We know flights are going to be delayed, but we still send that angry tweet going, well, Delta, if you think this is the way to run a railroad. And
it happens every day.
It does.
But we're expecting more.
We've gotten there.
We have. And they're serving more to us. They're making recommendations. They know what we don't like. And now the tastes of those recommendations are in tune with our behavior.
Let's move to the people who have never moved to the cloud. I mean, it's 2019, right? We've got, I would say, the majority of your brand names are already there. So how do you crack that resistance now? I mean, I would have to believe that somebody who has not put, especially their like major mission critical applications, they haven't gone into Amazon or wherever. Do you give up on them? Like, do you just basically work on closing the closable?
This business is not putting caps on bottles. Each interaction is different. Each cloud journey is unique to each business.
Okay.
Each customer is different.
Yeah.
And there's a couple rules of thought on this, is that you have to take the time with each one. Now, there are people that are going to push back at you and say, I'm not ready, I'm just more comfortable. That's okay.
Yeah.
But I still want to educate you. So everything that we do as a business, which I think is really what puts us at the top, is we lead with education. If someone just wants an AWS 101, what the heck is it? How does it work? Why do I need it? What are companies in my market segment doing? That's where you're going to get value from EagleDream.
Yeah. That's
not a paid engagement. That's us coming in and, like you and I are doing, just BSing on the phone, on the mics here, talking about what works and why.
Well, I want to put that in context. What was the first thing you ever sold?
What was the first thing I ever sold?
I'm going somewhere with
You're
this.
going somewhere with this. Well, there was a time when there was some lemonade out in my driveway.
Oh, no. Take me a little bit further ahead.
Farther than that. So interestingly enough, it came into payroll.
All right. So I did cars. I was a car guy.
Yeah.
So I learned an awful lot about like sales and transactions and not trying to close the unclosable back then. But, you in payroll, I guarantee had the same experiences I had in cars and eventually telecom. That's like I parlayed that into because everybody said, "Oh, if you can sell cars, you can sell anything." Right?
Sure.
And that was the play.
Yeah, sure.
I sold cars to get the B2B gig.
That's right.
That was like my big brain theory.
Mm-hmm.
That's as far as my scheming goes. We had that person, the sales manager typically, who would say, "We're not going to get anything out of this right now." Like very short term, very sort of slash and burn thinking, right? If this person's not going to buy, drop them. Just like, and there were a lot of burned bridges. There were a lot of bad feelings that were a result of that because that was, let's say 20 years ago, right? Ballpark.
Sure.
Right. Now we've got these younger generations coming up who flat out reject that thinking, which
True.
Yeah, and
very true.
I'm actually very pleased for that. I was never the guy who liked burning the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
They help me to resist that training that I got 20 years ago and say, make the investment in the customer because who knows what happens in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 5 years, right? You don't want to be that guy they're telling stories about going, and you wouldn't believe how he tried to one call close me. Like, I don't want to be that anecdote of yours.
No, yeah.
And it sounds like that's what you're saying. You say like, okay, look, just because they're not a customer today doesn't mean we can't spare the resources to kind of include them in our events, include them in our webinars, come and visit them in our place, and actually just plant the seed.
It's a little bit more of our culture too.
Okay.
Where the puck has dropped on public cloud. And there's a little bit of me being a fanboy about what it can do and how I've seen it work for companies.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, if you wait longer, it's going to be even harder to adopt because it's moving so fast.
That's interesting. That's like a series that you start in the middle instead of like, you don't know the passwords and things that there's.
You nailed it.
Yeah. You came into the show in the middle and everybody's using terms that you don't understand.
Correct.
It's just harder now.
Correct. And if you want to build, iterate, innovate, you have to get in the game now. And
that's
the longer you wait, and I get that. That's what frustrates me.
Yeah.
We have a company in my hometown that really is like that.
Yeah.
And the CIO says, well, what would you like me to do? I mean, fire all my people that all they know is the data center I have here and start anew?
And I sympathize with that guy.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But I'm saying, no, take this. Have these people understand what's possible.
Yeah.
And if they're not interested, that's a whole nother story. But if they're interested in helping the business and there's true business value there, the company's going to win and you're going to win. And there's going to be a wonderful story to the board of directors.
So one of the things I do want to kind of give you a chance to do, if you like, is predict the future, right? So we're sitting here, like I said, we're talking 2019, and there are some people who maybe haven't gotten into this TV series of what's happening in the cloud.
Sure.
And we talked about them. We talked about people who got into it and maybe, they need to sand the corners off and make it smoother. But I want to know about the people who are really like setting what the future is going to be, right? So you, John Providence, prophet of Rochester, what's the bleeding edge? What's 5 years out?
There's going to be companies out there that don't see competition coming.
Oh, yeah.
Digitally native companies taking those digitally immigrant companies out.
You've said digital native a few times today.
It is. Companies that just come out and say, you know what, just like your folks upstairs that are doing their thing, they're going to start businesses using platform, using AI, using machine learning, and provide industry differentiating customer experiences and take out our large archaic businesses that haven't gone fast enough. It's going to happen, and we don't see them coming. So without the fear, of the unknown happening, right?
Yeah.
There's also the pragmatic way to think about that, where the experiences we're all getting served from your Amazons and those digital native companies that have really taken hold, Uber, they're going to find their way into the business, into things that you expect every day in business. You might say, wait, that's business to consumer. What about business to business? Well, it still matters because we're still consumers of those other services, such PayPal and Amazon.com and others.
Well, take a look at how Amazon has done the rest of their business. Like, if you would have told me 10 years ago that they were going to be serving me music.
And Netflix and Hulu and...
Okay, so Amazon is now in the home services business. Like they
Alexa,
see a bunch of different ways to do all these different things, and it comes down to everything that you're talking about. They've predicted the digital future, and they said, well, if we know what they're shopping for, then we can make it easy for them to rebuy it by just telling Alexa to rebuy it.
Let's take it another step.
Yeah.
53% of what people watch on Netflix is based on recommendations.
Yes.
They know you so well that they are serving you material that that the general population is accessing more than half the time.
I read something interesting too. They actually came up with an interesting metric, which is the amount of time that you spend looking for titles. They're trying to keep that down. Like just like the drive-through window at Burger King, the smaller the number is, the better their score. Like they're literally ranking themselves by how long did it take you to find something to watch. That's truly being tied into the customer experience. They said, well, obviously I wasn't in the room, so I'm making up all of this dialogue. When Scott spends 53 seconds looking for a title in Netflix, he goes back to the main menu and then goes to see what's on Amazon.
Sure.
And if he spends 44 seconds there, he goes back to the main menu and he starts checking through Hulu, right? And they know that, and they're so customer focused that their AI effort is critically important. It makes a difference between watching Netflix and not watching Netflix, because we're only a few opt-outs to Amazon away from, why do we pay for Netflix? I always end up in Amazon anyway.
That's right. And I have a little conspiracy theory.
Go.
This whole 10-year look back on Facebook.
Yeah.
What was that all about?
Oh, I don't know if that's
was that not a conspiracy of people trying to do some age analysis of 10 years ago to today and taking all that data of what someone like? That's really scary that just came out of nowhere.
I refuse to give that the conspiracy theory label, and I will just say I don't know if it was Facebook's plan or just someone who has access. Like, it could be someone else.
Do you know how much data you could gather from that information?
Tons.
That's right. And then we were just talking about what's coming tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's more like what's happening today to influence tomorrow. And, these little surveys we get online and all these things that we type in and our pictures, all that, will it be used against us? Probably. But will it be used to help us, live life better and make better decisions? I hope so too.
Okay, so let's unpack that against us just for a quick second.
Sure.
Right? I think it's easy to jump to that because it feels as though it's like... it's a contract you haven't signed yet, so therefore it's a bad contract.
Well,
right?
have you read the Google terms and
never, not one time.
Do it. If you're in IT and you use Gmail, read it, because you don't own anything that you write in your emails. Anything in Gmail they own, and that's part of it. And that's a scary, scary thing, especially for corporations and intellectual property and all of that. They use it for analytics.
I want to really push back against the dystopian expectation that just because there's AI or just because there's data being stored, that it's necessarily bad, because it still doesn't go anywhere without the consumer's participation, right?
That's
right. So I'm a part of this thing called AI for Good here in Pittsburgh with our good friend.
Wonderful cause.
Yeah. Kenny Chen, who has been on the show a couple times, he was the one who sort of planted the flag here in Pittsburgh. And I took that whole weird Blade Runner, we're all going to be living in, the dystopian future thing to Kenny. And he says, Scott, don't forget there's a market aspect to this too. You get a vote. And I don't know if it helps anybody to think of it that way. I don't like the idea of being bummed out by the fact that AI is coming, just sort of carte blanche, like without thinking it through.
I think, IoT and moonshot. That's the Joe Biden group of smart people in the world that are going to try and cure cancer. It's a lot of what they're doing is based on some of these algorithms that are pre-built using machine learning techniques. And that's where we're going to get some really nice traction. And I was actually talking to someone who's very much involved with it 2 days ago, and he goes, John, this is as close as we're going to get.
Nice.
And you've got Hopkins, Roswell. I mean, you name your favorite, most prominent
players.
They are there, they're doing it, and they're using this technology to benefit the world. So it's very exciting. And And we talk about all the ways it can be abused though too, but there's so much good happening.
Yeah, I think that's true about almost anything, right? Like you could say that about the law. Like you could literally just take something that is literally hundreds of years old and be like, oh, well, what are we going to do if everybody has a lawyer? Right? Oh God, imagine the future when anybody could just sue anybody. I shudder to think, right?
Yeah.
John Providence, EagleDream Technologies. Thanks for coming in, man.
Thanks for having me. You're the best.
All right, that's the end of the ride. Thanks to John and EagleDream Technologies. Olga and I, over at the Colonel's side of this empire, are really excited to be helping them launch here at Pittsburgh. It's kind of a dream come true. I love working with people at the top of the game. Make sure you hit us up, krnls.co/EagleDream. You're going to see all kinds of stuff for their launch. It's going to be a really, really important thing that we're doing over there. A lot of you could benefit. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Check us out over there.
The Pitchwerks podcast comes to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a production of the Epicast Network and McTaggart, LLC. Engineering and production by Buzzy Torek and Nick Miller. For more information, show feedback, and ad sales, visit pitchwerks.com. pitchwerks.com. On social media, find and follow the show on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram using that same brand name, pitchwerks.